Once you get to orbit, you are halfway to anywhere and nowhere at the same time. And what if you got to orbit on a space shuttle? Now you have to carry an extra weight of wings and atmospheric engines. What if you can create a different type of space shuttle in Kerbal Space Program? The shuttle that can park all extra weight in low Kerbin orbit. In this video I will be showcasing space shuttle with detachable wings and engines. Wings and engines that are parked in low Kerbin orbit to be recovered for their return later. In this manner, delta V of main craft gain up to extra 30%. With this extra range, I would be creating a base from several 25-ton modules in one of the polar Mun craters. Task otherwise impossible with the same weight and size of a shuttle. As all space things, this new shuttle have a quirky name. So it is called Logistically Acceptable Maneuver Executor, or just simply lame. So without further ado, let's talk about lame, building tips, tricks, techniques and other Kerbal stuff. Extra KSP settings are very important for this shuttle design. Over here you can find an option for enabling advanced tweakables. Advanced tweakables have many features, but for this craft, auto strut setting is the most important part. For a simpler craft, one can easily replace vanilla auto struts with more convenient Kerbal joint reinforcement modification, but for the more complex craft, this mod is just too powerful and borderline cheating. So if you want to achieve structural stability, some clever application of vanilla autostrut is overdue. Other important thing is to use dual docking system. Two large docking ports can mitigate the torque that would be otherwise applied during re-entry or acceleration. Fuel crossfit on docking ports is disabled for the ascent. When I was designing this craft, main body and wings were created as separate crafts and then merged through the sub-assembly system. Wing section is the second stage of the launch system and carry all the oxidizer necessary to reach low Kerbin orbit and to make the final deorbit burn. After wing separation, you are left with only liquid fuel for the main mission. This craft uses autostrut for every single piece of wing, fuel tanks on wings, docking ports and engines. Other important thing is to use one of cargo bays as a root part. Autostrut is set to a root part. Using cockpit as a root part will result in a rapid disassembly way easier. One can use rigid attachments everywhere, but flexibility is still necessary for runway landings. Only enable rigid attachment on the docking ports, engines and spinal fuel tanks. This craft is relatively fragile to extreme G-forces. To avoid high G maneuvers, this shuttle was designed with the maximum drag in mind. More drag will allow this shuttle to reach acceptable re-entry speeds way faster, way higher. This is why engine nacelles use Mark III to Mark II adapters that are infamous for the amount of provided drag. Main body of the shuttle used 8 nuclear engines in opposite parts of the cargo bay and split fuel into equal parts on the both sides of the craft. To maintain exact center of mass at any point, I use crew quarters with 2 drills on the one side and large convertatron with other equipment on the other side. It is the same design principle as the actually stable shuttle or just ASS. I do clip more fuel tanks inside of the main body, but this is more of a visual thing than something necessary for a good construction. I just like to look at space sausage, not a space stick. So yeah, sausages aside, let's talk about the launch system. Sausages or not, you still need to reach the orbit. For the launch system, I just integrated 2 more Mark III hulls between engine nacelles and the main body. This allows for very stable center of mass during every part of the ascent. Due to the amount of drag generated by this shuttle, this launch system is bigger than it looks. It have total of 16 vector engines. Extra fuel tanks were actually clipped into Mark III parts. Big tail fins are attached to the side boosters to kill extra oscillation. Since the whole structure is so stable, no separation boosters is necessary. Boosters carry enough delta V to put the shuttle on a suborbital trajectory outside of atmosphere. Second stage, or simply wing section, fire up in vacuum of space. To maintain center of mass, lower part of the nacelles carry twice the amount of engines. It is 4 clipped Rapier engines in the bottom row and only 2 Rapier engines in the top row. Wobble at first. As the craft burn fuel, center of mass align exactly with the center of thrust. Once the orbit achieved, shuttle will detach wings. This is actually a tricky part. To undock everything from everything, you need to undock one port first, then make the second port main docking port and undock it as well. Only in this manner you will have 2 separate crafts. So, the first mission to Mun carried just a simple module. Burn to Mun is pretty mundane. Since Mun is so close to Kerbin, one cannot go directly into polar orbit in the convenient manner. So I put my shuttle into Mun polar orbit only after initial equatorial injection. Polar burn is extra 500 to 600 meters per second of delta V. For the landing I wait straight without a week-long alignment window. So I was landing in pretty dark place with like a bit of light, but it was quite dark. But since I have extra margin of around 400 delta V to land, I was able to find a good landing spot by burning extra fuel. Payload is simply dropped from the cargo bay and craft just hop to the site using engines. After that, craft close the cargo bay doors and just roll on the site using the reaction wheels. Actual tip here is to use other control points, not the point that is aligned with your nuclear engine, just use your cockpit or maybe the docking port on the nose. This way you can roll way easier with your reaction wheels because they are aligned with the actual docking port on the nose. After all that, craft can actually open the cargo bay doors, use hydraulic lifts to lift the actual craft from the ground, use the actual drills with the action groups, and obviously trigger the refinery with fuel cells. And I made this design not only for the visual appeal, I actually went for this on purpose. This way I can actually look inside of the cargo bay and just trigger the bloody things. My camera will not be like camera gore that make me like... Alright, so where I was at. So I was actually totally debated by a satellite with this like satellite report that I'll have some ore here. Unfortunately this was a minimal amount, but well, still craft was fully refueled in the time frame of the polar night. Launch is pretty simple, craft just roll back into the vertical position, open cargo bay doors and go full thrust. Actually was a bit confused at first since well, piloting sausage can be a bit weird, but once I flipped sausage into the horizontal position, it became more normal. This fully fueled craft with no payload have more than 4k delta V, so return burns are just piece of cake. Just make to orbit, make to zero inclination and burn to Kerbin. Kerbin aerobrake was done at 49 kilometers, but this craft can go way down to like 42, 41 and maybe even 40 kilometers. Used actual nose docking port as a control point once again. This way I can just set SAS to radial out, and since this craft is perfectly balanced, it just stayed rock solid through the whole of aerobrake. After aerobrake you still need to rendezvous with your wing section, but incredible amount of delta V allow for rather radical straight burns from quite far away. Just put orbit into 10 km intercept and do several radical 100 meter burns. Set nav ball to target mode, burn retrograde target to kill relative velocity, burn target to intercept. Repeat until you have acceptable docking distance. Turn off your nuclear engines and use RCS to dock. For the docking procedure, make sure to use correct docking ports out of 2. Swap to wing section to point docking port at the main craft. Align, use RCS. To have proper angle at dual ports, use docking alignment indicator modification. For a perfectly balanced craft, this docking is a cakewalk. The orbit burn is straightforward. Wing have more delta V than necessary for this mission. I designed the whole system around 40-ton payload and well, it lifts only 25 tons to low Kerbin orbit. After the deorbit burn, do not forget to enable crossfit on docking ports to access the liquid fuel from the main fuselage. Since this shuttle have a lot of drag, one can be very aggressive with the re-entry. This time I totally undershoot, but since it is not a glider, but well, a proper spaceplane, I totally made it to a runway. After the first mission, done a bit of tweaking. Obviously I removed the wing rigidity because well, this is no go for landing, and I actually added one extra landing gear. Next 3 launches carry one habitation module, big rover that have lab on board and can actually dock to other modules, and well, return vehicle. And return vehicle is actually a quirky one, but well, you need to watch until the end of the video to check it out. By the way, all these launches are pretty much in line with the community run challenges for the Mun shuttles, so it is not just a random stuff that I like pieced together, but an actual missions that people fly with the space shuttles and succeed with less things that shuttles do, like mine. Alright. All 3 launches went very easy, was pretty much burning the same maneuvers as the first time around, so for the landings I actually waited until morning and went straight down from like 100 km orbits. First 2 times around landed quite far away, third time was pretty much like nailing like 200 meter range, and obviously the payloads. So the first payload was a big rover. Quite a big and fat rover, actually slapped 2 big reaction control rings on this bad boy and it drives like a charm on man. Used it to relocate my first module. Second module is the main habitation with an extra lab and bunch of energy storage, fuel cells and obviously solar panels. There will be actually a total of 4 returns from Mun. Main shuttle returns and 1 extra shuttle. And, well, you can count and notice that there is only 3 shuttles. Well, this is actually a final and 4th payload. A shuttle in a shuttle, yeah. One of these days I need to make a proper like Matryoshka shuttle video, and that would be like a shuttle in a shuttle that carry a rocket with a micro shuttle or something like that. Yeah. I'm crazy. And as all things vanilla robotics, sometimes it's just like pain to make it work properly, especially when you fold, unfold, lock it in place. I just troubleshooted through this thing like on the ground, on Mun, like once again on the ground, and still in the end it was not working properly. So to actually unfold opposite wing, I need to unlock hinge on the other side, then it will unfold, remove symmetry, return symmetry. I don't know how it works, but nevertheless I was totally successful, and my shuttle wing actually locked those wings in the proper angle of 90 degrees. It was ready to be an escape vehicle for the Mun base for a crew of 6 brave Kerbals. Return of the main shuttles was pretty straightforward. Get them on orbit, burn to 0 inclination, burn to Kerbin, make aero brake at like 42 to 50 km altitude, circularize, rendezvous with the wing section, dock with wing section, then make the orbit burn. Totally nailed the first landing, for some bizarre reason was a bit bouncy on the second landing, and then went for island runway as the third landing just for a change. And once I thought that everything is like nice and dandy, the disaster have happened at my Mun installation. After delivering the return shuttle, I was relocating my base once again. And when you stop to do things properly, well, something can explode. Forcing docking by just pushing things around is not the most brightest idea, especially when you have like hydraulic lifts to actually align the docking ports. To make things even worse, explosion actually took out the fuel storage, so now the base do not have any fuel for the fuel cells. I think Kerbals would be using that escape and return shuttle way sooner than expected. So, the shuttle have place for 6 Kerbals, they totally crammed themselves in a small shuttle. Return shuttle have 2 powerful RCS thrusters to lift the nose from the ground, and 2 powerful Raper engines that can just push the shuttle to the orbit, no time. Shuttle itself is heavier than it looks, it have a lot of fuel tanks, there are a lot of clip in there, probably like this shuttle, this craft should be twice the size, but then the wing area would be just too big to be like reasonable. So yeah, it's kind of both form factor to fit the cargo bay and the actual practicality of wing size. All return burns are powered by a single nuclear engine. Unlike my bigger shuttle, this small craft is more like Space Shuttle Classic and really unstable during re-entry. But since craft is too small and powered by like 4 reaction control wheels, it's still like it's relatively easy to pilot. Made it to Kerbal Space Center with a bit of atmosphere hopping, and landing was smooth, stable and very easy. So what are my final thoughts on this whole space shuttle system? Actually, maybe I would try to make it into hypersonic version or maybe even SSTO version. The whole idea with detachable wing, well, it's powerful, but it have an opportunity cost in terms of real life time. Building something like a Mun base is rather time consuming, and adding like one extra procedure as extra step is not really ideal. But if you do something real like long range and you don't want to bleed that delta B with extra weight, you know, like going to the Joule system or maybe ELO or visiting several planets or maybe going to Moho. Yeah, Moho definitely like, yeah, I think Moho is the place, Tylo is the place. Also, wait a second, if you go to Lathe, like land the whole system, then detach the main fuselage, you have no wings that float. That means that you can turn main fuselage into the submarine, you just need to add enough weight. Yeah, totally. I will just leave this thought here. So yeah, end of video. Bye!